Hey everybody, it is Colin Nitro for Nitromaniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited coming at you with another Nitro Stake. This one's been delayed by a couple of weeks, just due to life and things happening and so on and so forth. I meant to get to this a little sooner than I wanted to on Collective Weekend, but time permits. Now we're getting to it. This is my take on my first ever watch through of a GCW Bloodsport card. Yes, this was Bloodsport at the Collective, or Bloodsport 2020. It ran on October 11th, 2020, during the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend from the Marion County Fairgrounds in Indianapolis, Indiana. And yeah, this is my first time watching it. To explain Bloodsport, it was kind of put together over Mania Week a few years ago. First by Matt Riddle, who's now in WWE and GCW promoters and that stuff. And then later, when Matt Riddle made his move to WWE, Josh Barnett, the New Japan Pro Wrestling and MMA just straight up legend, took it over. And it's now his quote unquote promotion or Mania Week show, I guess, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. Basically take 10 or 12 of the legit tough guys or girls in pro wrestling and put them in a UWFI shoot style, shoot fighting, no rope indie card. Sometimes it rolls out as a tournament, kind of like the classic old UFC style cards from back in the day. So the format for this thing is quite interesting. You have 10 or 12 of pro wrestling's toughest people, basically, and sometimes it works in a tournament format like this one, where they're trying to crown the Queen of Bloodsport with the first ever Bloodsport Women's Champion out of this one, with 4 contestants in kind of a mini tournament. And sometimes there's a tournament for the guys as well, except this was just a straight up tough guy card with a women's tournament attached to it. So again, like I said, no ropes, shoot fighting style, and I've seen vids from past years. We've seen the video of Barnett and Suzuki going toe to toe during I guess it was last year's Bloodsport 2019 in New York City. So let's slip the dogs of war and see what we got. So the card opens with a little taste of Japan as we have a full opening ceremony with fighters, some huge names here. The main event for this thing alone has the Dirty Daddy Chris Dickinson, one of the top guys in independent wrestling right now, taking on the AEW World Heavyweight Champion Jon Moxley. Yep, and that was it is an awesome main event, and we'll get to it. But Dickinson walks out and hits the ring and does his best splits entrance like Bas Rutten back in the day of UFC. Mox still walks out, kind of saunters out, cool as ever. And one man on the call during this, it is former WWN Live announcer and straight up good guy Lenny Leonard doing the play-by-play. Lenny basically recaps the code of Bloodsport. It's kind of like a code of honor, much like early Ring of Honor and so on and so forth, and kind of like the rule set that UWFI had back when it was around during its heyday of the 80s. And we go right into our opening contest. This one was Simon Grimm versus Matt Makowski, and Grimm is a vaudevillain no more. No, it's Simon Grimm, and Makowski is a newcomer to pro wrestling, but basically an MMA guy. Anyone nicknamed Weapon X has to be badass. Yes, that's Makowski's nickname. And Makowski opens with some palm strikes early and hits a moonsault into a front face lock. So again, this is shoot style. It's not quote unquote shoot. There's some, predetermined or scripted element to it, but for about, I'd say about 60 or 75% of the presentation, it's, basically a MMA scuffle or something that you could see at basically any dojo you'd walk into anywhere, and just MMA-based athletes doing MMA things in a wrestling ring. Headbutt by Grimm lands to a big right hand by Makowski. Makowski with a high head kick. He lays out Grimm for a bit. Makowski then locks in an ankle lock, but Grimm counters. Head and neck suplex, and it's over. Grimm by knockout. And yes, Not really pinfalls here to decide victors. It's more submission or knockout style victories. Again, much like a UFC card or any MMA card that you would see. So we didn't jump to the first match of the Bloodsport Women's Tournament, the semifinals. There's 4 combatants in this tournament to crown a champion, and it is NXT UK's Killer Kelly, well, formerly of NXT UK, now back on the freelance independent side, taking on the former NWA Women's Champion Allysin Kay. A lot of strikes landed by both ladies early on. Kelly lands a bunch of wide open shots. AK though fights back with a big Yakuza boot. AK goes for a cross arm breaker, but Kelly fights out. We have a chop battle. Kelly locks in a rear naked choke, but a desperation escape by AK leads to kind of a reversal where Kelly has to tap as AK locks in a head scissors. Very phenomenal match. Post-match respect shown, as these were two faces going head-to-head with each other, and the crowd in Indianapolis, which was one of the larger crowds during the collective weekend, really was applauding this one. This was kind of a sleeper match going into it, but the crowd really enjoyed it, and the presentation on the iPay-per-view was pretty good too. The second match of the Bloodsport Women's Tournament semifinals was legit Layla Hirsch versus Lindsay Snow. So a battle of two smaller athletes. So the one thing I know about Lindsay Snow going into Bloodsport is that she was to have debuted on a episode of the NWA Circled Squared project or program that was to run during the off season of NWA Power. Before that series got canceled, and that series ended up getting scrapped or canceled just due to the change in creative after Lagana left and Marquez and Corrigan took over creative of the product. So I know the match was taped. I'm not sure if we'll ever see it or not, but who knows, right? Hirsch I saw earlier in the day at Shimmer 118, of course. So the match starts and both women are looking for a cross arm breaker early, but Corelli left into a heel hook by Snow, gets the tap out shortly after the match starts. The final round will be Lindsay Snow versus Allysin Kay. Then we get back into some one-on-one competition over on the men's side of the card, and we have the big man Calvin Tankman versus Alexander James. Actually, both these guys are big. Tankman representing Indy's Big Starks brand. The crowd is 1,000% behind Tankman. James gets a body scissors, but Tankman slips out. This devolves into a slugfest, and 2 strikes to the head via Tankman knee, and repeated punches give Tankman the knockout victory. So, Tankman, a huge star off of this weekend, and a guy going into 2021 that a lot of promotions are going to be booking for sure. This was a weekend that he made his name, definitely. Next matchup was Cal Jack versus Eric Hammer, and if that name sounds familiar, Cal Jack, yeah, he's a former NXT roster member / Performance Center student, I guess. Formerly in NXT, he rolled out under the name of Cal Bishop, and Eric Hammer looks like a skinny Nikita Koloff. This is a battle of California here, as both athletes hail from the state of California. Jack levels Hammer early with a right hand. Hammer, though, fights back with back elbows, and it sends the match to the mat. This is a very tight contest, and then out of all of this, Cal Jack lands a Dr. Death Steve Williams-esque Dr. Bomb, which is pretty cool. However, the finish of this match, Hammer locks in a double wrist lock and gets a submission win. Eric Hammer, very impressive in fighting back. So, hey, this was, a pretty surprising undercard match, and Hammer, basically, a lot of people were looking at him on the card was like, well, he's Josh Barnett's training partner and buddy. Of course, he's on the card. Maybe, but the guy can handle it, and he deserves to be on that card. And I know he's done some Bloodsport stuff before, so if this is his time of year, hey, some wrestlers like frequenting one event per year, and if that's the case, this is his event. That's cool with it. Cal Jack is going to be a name too now that he's back on the indies that a lot of people will be paying attention to for sure. He's got some national exposure now, and he has the NXT background as well, so he can do really good storytelling matches, or at least has the education for it. So watch for both these guys going forward. Again, this was another card where a lot of people are off this card, you're going to be seeing on a lot of independent cards and a lot of smaller promotions, and the NWAs and the potentially AEW Darks and stuff like that going forward into 2021 and beyond. Next match, Filthy Tom Lawler taking on Homicide. Hey, it's Brian Alvarez's buddy versus Eddie Kingston's buddy. Two icons here, of course. Lawler, since transitioning from MMA over to pro wrestling, or back onto the pro wrestling side of things, has got a huge fan base, basically based out of MLW, Major League Wrestling in Florida. And Homicide is an independent legend from way back when. How cool is it to hear Lenny Leonard call a Homicide match again? Yeah, no shit. That was pretty freaking cool. Lawler goes for a kick, but Homicide grabs him for an STF. No submission. Forearms galore. And this again was a battle between a trained UFC fighter with a professional record, Tom Lawler, versus Homicide, who no record going in because most of his fights were on the street growing up in New York and that stuff. So of the day-to-day, hey, I'm fighting to save my life type variety. So that's the interesting parallel here. It was at this point where Homicide just straight up throws the technique out the window and just starts kicking the head in on Lawler. That was kind of brutal. But Lawler flips it around, locks in a Dragon Sleeper, no dice for a submission. Homicide then goes for his finisher, the Cop Killer, right in the middle of the ring. But Lawler counters and gets the submission win off of a leg vice, and holy F, Batman. This was an incredible matchup. Definitely a dark horse match of the night contender for sure on this card. Next contest, Josh Alexander representing Impact's The North tag team taking on Davey Boy Smith Jr., FKA Harry Smith, FKA the Baby Bulldog from longtime Stampede Wrestling lore way back in the day and that stuff. Just he's a legend out here. And so this was in Eastern Canada. Josh Alexander based out of Toronto versus Western Canada. Davey Boy Smith, of course, based out of Calgary. Dramatic pause, Alberta, Canada, i.e. 3 hours down the road that way from Nitromaniac TV HQ. Davey Boy Smith walking out to his dad's old Stampede entrance music, Turn Me Loose by Loverboy. I love it. That was great. This entire card is Heart Dungeon rules, but this match really favored Smith for sure. Beautiful contest. This was my favorite so far. Yes, this was my pick for match of the night. I loved it. Smith goes for a sharpshooter attempt, but Alexander escapes out. Smith catches Alexander and nails a picture perfect Liger bomb for the KO victory. Yeah, Smith got the win off of a wrestling maneuver and kind of a nod to the, well, it's a few months ago, but the recently retired Jushin Thunder Liger with a Liger bomb, I should say. The Baby Bulldog is back, brothers. Yes, no, he's never left, and he's frequented these Bloodsport cards, I think, since the beginning, and is a mainstay on these things. So you know what, watch for him maybe in a main event or one of these things against somebody like a Moxley or something like that. Davey Boy Smith Jr. versus Moxley, man, I'd pay to see that. That'd be fun. Then it was time for the Bloodsport Women's Title Tournament Finals between Allison Kay and Lindsay Snow. Kay has the height advantage here, but otherwise this is even. This is a fairly even fight early on. Heavy bombs by Snow, big elbows by Kay, but Snow locks into heel hook and Kay taps for the submission victory, and Lindsay Snow is your 2020 Bloodsport Women's Champion. This is a fun concept, great fights all throughout this kind of mini tournament and that stuff. And yeah, I became a fan of this style of card and this style of wrestling during this card. This is something that I've wanted to see for a long time, and everybody on the undercard did a great job. Dare I say the first 10 out of 10? I think so. I think at this point it was a 10 out of 10. So, but we moved to the main event next. And this was the aforementioned Chris Dickinson versus Jon Moxley main event. Here we go. NWA, United Wrestling Network, Team Pazuzu over in GCW. Chris Dickinson versus AEW's Top Dog. Mox using Hole for his walkout music. I can respect that. hey, Vince, Shane, here's your Raw Underground here, RIP. Yeah, kind of ironic that this card runs and then not even a week or two later, Raw Underground is no more. So, maybe it exposed the posers a little bit. We'll see. I figure with this, with the momentum here, at this point, give Dickinson an NWA title shot next week against Aldis. I have written down. Yeah, that was a huge weekend for Dickinson as well. He just cemented himself as basically the top guy without a major promotion right now that's left on the indies. Somebody's going to scoop him up eventually. It's just going to be a matter on what side of the Wednesday Night War he ends up on, I would say. That's just my prediction. Mox, of course, the IWGP US Champion and AEW World Champion. This match is very technical early on. Mox throws Dickinson onto the concrete, onto the outside, but Dickinson fights back. Huge forearm sends Dickinson out of the ring once again. And then he goes for a Gotch-style pile driver, but it's reversed into a dragon screw by Dickinson that had the crowd kind of buzzing. That was a great maneuver. The knee bar spills both men to the outside. There's an epic chop battle. After two high Germans and some left and rights, Mox might be actually tapping out. This is the point of the match where Dickinson was well in advantage here. A knee strike into a choke though by Mox, and Mox wins via a choke out, and the crowd just really peaked at that point. They were the loudest they've been all night. Post-match, Mox addresses the crowd, respect is shown, and he puts over Dickinson. This is the end of an incredible night, and a very short card, very stomachable card too. You could watch this instead of a Monday Night Raw, because it only runs 2 hours and 14 minutes. Monday Night Raw, even without commercials, is longer, so you can get more done on your Monday nights if you wanted to watch this card instead. So my thoughts on a overall rating for the card, I will give it a 9 out of 10. I was very satisfied with the card. Like I said, I was a huge fan of the undercard, and the main event it had the wrestling community buzzing for about a day or two, and we saw GIFs. You can still see GIFs of this card leak around the internet and that stuff, and it was a lot of fun for sure. Now, before I leave you, I've seen in the subsequent days since this event some news that a lot of the participants and fans over the collective weekend and that stuff have been getting COVID-19 testing done, and some of these tests have been showing up positive. I'm not one to go out there and say, well, this event shouldn't have happened or blah, blah, blah under these circumstances or anything. It happened, and it's a good thing that it happened, and it's a good thing that these people are getting tested after the event, and it's a good thing that the people who are testing positive are coming forward and sharing their stories and that stuff of being tested and what precautions they are told to make or they were making and whatever. The event was run safely. That's it. It's just that during this time, you're not going to be able to run even an event of larger than even 15 people now at this point, and not have a situation where COVID may be a reality for 1 out of 15 or so. So for everybody on the internet and on Twitter and that stuff that's hiding behind a screen and that's lambasting Joey Janela and GCW, I should say, and Josh Barnett and the other promoters of events, Dave Prazak over Collective Weekend for holding events, grow a set and get your head out of your ass. Like, really, I mean, this could have happened anywhere where there's motorsports events that are happening with large crowds. I mean, I'm a huge NHRA fan, and this weekend in Texas, they have a national event, and Texas basically said, hey, motorsports is an essential resource. Pack the stands. So there's that, of course. So, I mean, that's all I have to say about that. It's just, think before you post with something like that. And, these guys are, once you're showing up on shows at this level, you are a professional in this industry. So us as fans, we need to chill a little bit and let these professionals deal with it in a professional way. And they have checks and balances in that were already developed for this. I mean, like, they were doing testing each day. They were, not letting people who were sick wrestle or had situations where they couldn't wrestle. So, and fans weren't showing up if they were sick. So, I mean, everybody handled this to the best of their abilities. They had face masks on in the building and so on and so forth. So, Anyway, you know how it is here in 2020. Sometimes you can't win. Plain and simple when you're arguing with some of these idiots, but whatever. Anyways, later days. Happy wrestling watching. Take it easy. Thanks again for watching. Thanks again for your patience as I attempted to get this out over the past few days or so, and just life and stuff got in the way here. And stay tuned for more content here on Nitromaniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited. Got some cool stuff happening here over the next few weeks, so I'm fairly excited in what way we're going to be taking the channel here and that stuff. So stay tuned. Tell your friends, tell your family. If you're not subscribed already, subscribed, ring the ringer, and yeah, we'll check you out next time.